oneness with Buddha, oneness with Dharma, oneness with Sangha. It is very good. It is very much an honor to be here practicing with you in this March 2025 Sesshin with the theme of awakening using sound. I'm going to read some from the Sutra of the Sixth Ancestor and make some comments as I go. Let's see. This is from the section called On Prajna. The next day, the prefect Y, so it's a government official of some sort, asked the ancestor to give another address. Therefore, having taken his seat and asked the assembly to purify their mind collectively, reciting the Maha Prajna Paramita Sutra, he gave the following address. So, just like we do to this day, and just like thousands and thousands of other Zen Buddhists do, reciting the Great Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Learned audience, the wisdom of enlightenment is inherent in every one of us. It is simply because of the delusion under which our mind works that we fail to realize it ourselves, and that we have to seek the advice and the guidance of enlightened ones before we can know our own essence of mind. You should know that so far as Buddha nature is concerned, there is no difference between an enlightened person and an ignorant one. What makes the difference is that one realizes it while the other is ignorant of it. Now let me talk to you about Maha Prajna Paramita so that each of you can attain wisdom. Learned audience, those who recite the word prajna the whole day long do not seem to know that prajna is inherent in their own nature. Do we listen to the sutras like that? Do we chant them thinking, this is about some person in some exotic country long ago who was better at me than at meditation, or better at me than being a good person, and therefore it's about them, but I'll just say this because if I don't, someone might think I'm cheating or not participating wholly. Or do we chant the sutras knowing that they're really speaking our own name, talking right to us, celebrating what we are? Merely talking on food will not appease hunger, and this is exactly the case with these people. We might talk on emptiness, shunyata, for myriads of kalpas. That's a really long time. But talking alone will not enable us to realize the essence of mind, and it serves no purpose in the end. That is, if we don't practice, all of the ideas of Dharma aren't going to ease our suffering. The word Maha Prajna Paramita is Sanskrit. It means great wisdom to reach the opposite shore of the sea of existence. What we have to do is put it into practice with our mind. Whether we recite it or not does not matter. Mere reciting it without mental practice may be likened to a phantasm, a magical delusion, a flash of lightning, or a dewdrop. Those are all images in the Diamond Sutra, which was something that Huineng recommended that we chant, about just how flowing existence is. On the other hand, if we do both, then our mind will be in accord with what we repeat orally. Our very nature is Buddha, and apart from this nature, there is no other Buddha. What is Maha? It means great. The capacity of the mind is as great as that of space. It is infinite, neither round nor square, neither great nor small, neither green nor yellow, neither red nor white, neither above nor below, neither long nor short, neither angry nor happy, neither right nor wrong, neither good nor evil, neither first nor last. Intrinsically, our transcendental nature is empty and not a single thing can be attained. It is the same with the essence of mind, which is a state of emptiness. Learned audience, when you hear me talk about emptiness, do not fall into the idea of vacuity, because this is not about annihilation or nothingness. Learned audience, the illimitable spaciousness of the universe is capable of holding myriads of things of various shape and form, such as the sun, the moon, stars, mountains, rivers, worlds, springs, rivulets, bushes, woods, good men, bad men, dharmas pertaining to goodness and badness, deva planes, that's heavenly dimensions of existence, hells, great oceans, and all the mountains of the Mahameru. In Buddhist cosmology, Meru is this vast, great mountain that's the pinnacle and center of existence. The spaciousness of our nature embraces all of these. We say that the essence of mind is great because it embraces all things, since all things are within our nature. When we see the goodness or the badness of other people, we are not attracted by it, nor repelled by it, nor attached to it, so that our attitude of mind is greatly spacious. Therefore, we call it Maha. Bring awareness to sound. And notice that without any effort, you can hear this sound. And the rest of the sounds in the room. Just hold the mind relaxed but alert. Find that wakefulness and that calm that's right down the middle. It's your nature. Relaxed but vivid. Notice that you can hear the sounds in the room, outside the room, all at the same time. The sounds that seem like they're over there, and the sounds that seem like they're over there, without mind going over there, without mind going over there. They're all present. The chirp of the bird and your heartbeat presenting themselves. The sensations of your body, a rustle in the room. All you feel and see presenting themselves simultaneously. Tune into the underlying silence. Feel how that silence is like a bowl that contains everything. It's not apart from anything. So we're doing this practice with sound during this retreat. And there are many virtues to extol about sound practice. One of the things I think is great about this practice is that nearly every physical interaction we have, it makes a sound. Continually, there's this moment speaking. The world speaks and we can receive. footsteps and electrical hums, and the rustling of clothes, the brushing of teeth, chewing, breathing, all the noises the body makes. So we can carry a kind of alert presence that in a way is just resting on, moment by moment, the ongoing emergence of sound. Our ordinary automatic mind and its narratives and its feeling of identity conjures familiar attitudes. Right? And the attitudes give rise to the internal dialogues. The internal dialogues reinforce the attitudes. And so we tend to live all the time in a very familiar, kind of boring state of being. And because our state of being is kind of limiting, kind of confining, we're always reaching for something to make it a little better, to make it a little bit more manageable. Are there cookies at the tea table? Whatever your mind may do. But if we listen continually, or like with any method, if we are immersed in direct experience continually, we begin to disrupt the narration of that familiar sense of what we are. We begin to dissolve what coheres that attitude, that lack of freshness about life, that feeling that maybe haunts us, that belief that weighs on us. We have to interrupt it, or else it keeps renewing. And so we listen continually. And in some ways, it's hard to, or maybe even impossible, to follow your breath all the time. Okay? You can work with the breath while you're sitting, during some kinds of motion, but maybe if you're baking cookies in the kitchen and the timer's going off, not so easy to follow your breath. But you can definitely hear. Or maybe if you're going for a run, following your breath is not exactly the practice you want to do because you're huffing and puffing, but you can hear your footsteps. So there's a way in which we can continually be getting outside of ourselves with this alertness, with this receptivity. So I like to make a practice that every time I go into a new room, the first thing I do is turn into the soundscape. And I recommend that. The very first thing you do, what are the sounds that are happening? To make being open, being attuned with the isness of the environment, priority over analyzing it, or deciding if it's pleasing you or not. Isn't that what the mind does? It's kind of like our, I don't know, there's probably some good metaphor. It enters the room before we do and decides whether it's pleasing or not, alerts us to all the problems, all the things we could improve or get, depends on your style. This is all part of how this identity is woven. This is how the familiar attitude and sense of being what we are, hi, I'm Jogen, what's your name? All of that just keeps on going. So instead, hearing world sounds. So each environment can manifest our automatic mind, or it can be the place of awakeness. And generally, we lose our freedom of spirit when we go into automatic mind. Some of us make habits of being virtuous and kind and being helpful. But even that can be automatic mind. Generally, with automatic mind goes into the room first. We're not free to respond to that room. Automatic mind meets the person first. We're not free to respond. And if we listen, I'm not caught on my thoughts. There's room for prajna. Huineng says, to know our mind is to obtain liberation. That's very straightforward instruction. This is instruction that we could take confidence in. To know our mind is to obtain liberation. To obtain liberation is to attain samadhi of prajna. Sounds like a fancy term. But he says samadhi of prajna is thoughtlessness. What is thoughtlessness? Thoughtlessness is to see and know things with a mind free from attachment. You just let the world present itself before you decide what it is. You let the moment arise before you've pre-strategized a response. Hearing is perfect without the thought, that's a grouse. Tasting is perfect without the thought, curry. That's prajna. When in use, Huineng continues, when in use it pervades everywhere, and yet it sticks nowhere. That's a very beautiful line. Good one to keep company with. When in use it pervades everywhere, and yet it sticks nowhere. This is awareness of sound. So somebody drops a spoon, and samadhi of prajna has no thought or judgment. Maybe there's the impulse to help them pick it up, but there's no good or bad about the person. There's no evaluation. Maybe there's even pleasure at the sound of the tinkle of a piece of wood hitting a tile. And you can see how this kind of thought-free mind is compassion. Often compassion is just kind of getting our extraness out of the way. Getting the extraness out of the way with our own experience, getting our extraness out of the way for others. Compassion being a straightforward mind. So each environment can manifest our automatic mind, or it can be a place of abundant listening. And each moment full of a silence that sounds. People are coming to really feel and taste that. An alive silence. And each silence embracing so many small vibrations. Hums and chirps and plunks and buzzes and hisses and thuds. There's a liberation in Zazen from believing that we need to be entertained. I like entertainment as much as anyone. In fact, I like entertainment more than most people I know. To be liberated from needing anything other than what life already does, to know that it's a fullness, can undercut our FOMO, can undercut our grasping. Can we say that we know if everything fell away, and hopefully we're still healthy, safe, if everything fell away, that the sound of the birds is enough? That the breeze through the trees is enough. That wind moving chimes is enough. To liberate ourselves from a particular kind of poverty, a poverty of needing experience to be in a particular way. No, I'd rather play a drum set than listen to the birds most of the time. But the birds are full, and the birds are good all the way. It's not insignificant, the liberation of sitting in basic fullness, the liberation of contentment. So we could say that one dimension of what we're doing is practicing a listening stance. And maybe all of Zen practice is a listening stance. Now, this doesn't mean it's passive. This isn't a passive practice. It is true that anatomically, your eardrum does whatever your eardrum does because air vibrations strike it and there is the perception of a sound. But that's not listening. Right? That's just the automatic functioning of your being. What is a listening stance? This is important to think about. One of the things, if you, and I recommend it, sometime study the Huineng Sutra extensively. One of the things that Huineng goes both barrels against is passive practice. That if you just sit with a dull but somewhat quiet mind, that's somehow going to bring you to life. Or that a dull but quiet mind is going to bring you intimacy with the universe. What is a listening stance? Because just your eardrum functioning is not what we're doing. You didn't have to come here. You don't have to sit here for that to happen. It's always happening. Is it a quality of interest? But again, we're not going, is that a this and not a that? Is it an alertness? Maybe it's an increased alertness. But the alertness has within it a sense that the universe is worth attending to. The universe is worth showing up for. What comes first? Thinking that the universe is blah, and attention that is flat. A listening stance is not, it's not passive, it's charged with Jogen Sensei, to paraphrase the master, said, to carry the automatic mind forward and experience things is illusion. That things carry themselves forward and experience you is awakeness. Is there a hearer before sound? What do you mean before sound? It's always a fullness. Is there a hearer after this sound? What do you mean after this sound? It's always a fullness. A metaphor I like for continual practice is that we have a lamp. Okay, let's say it's a candle, or maybe it's an old kind of kerosene lamp or something like that. A torch will do as well for an image. And we light it through the practice, and then our job is to keep it lit. Our job is to do what we would do if we were outside trying to light a candle and there was a breeze. Protect it from that breeze. Keep it from going out. We're lighting and keeping lit the lamp of listening. Keeping, you could say, energy in the ear consciousness. And we keep relighting the freshness of the flame of presence. The stance of listening is always available. It's always right here. It's kind of like a birthday candle, those kind that you try to blow out and then, oh, it's those kind of candles. It just comes right back on, over and over and over. This moment and the previous moment have no connection whatsoever. You're totally free to hear right now. This moment's state of mind and some other state of mind have no connection whatsoever. You're totally available for listening right now. This moment's absorption in sound is complete. So we keep relighting. We keep relighting. Now, I don't know if you have a lamp, a flame going. If you light it and it burns steadily, does it get brighter? I'm not a scientist. Is there a point at which its lumens increase? Or is it just a fullness of light at that moment? If you keep a lamp burning steadily, does its heat increase over time? What happens in your body, heart, mind environment is you keep the lamp of listening lit with continuity. Seems that something heats up. Seems that energy begins to flow. Our forebears called this joriki, the energy born of concentration. Energy gathers. We put it back into the ear consciousness. There will be people sitting up doing yaza this week. It's optional. Yaza means night sitting. I believe they're going to sit till 11 tonight and then an hour later, Tuesday and so forth, sitting through the night as the session goes on. And it's not a competition. It's not a grasping to try to get something. We're not saying that quantity is more important than quality, but it's an expression of devotion. I know lots of people in this room have danced all night, drank all night. Have you meditated all night? I know many of us find lots of energy for all kinds of things pushing beyond sleep. It's an expression of devotion, and something can happen in devotion. Because when the lamp of listening is lit longer and longer, I believe this does get brighter. I believe this does heat up. So you can join them, support that practice. And so we're listening. We're absorbing in sound. Some people, slight modifications of that practice. There are different states that arise as we do that. There is a cultivation of the mind. There is, sometimes we can clearly see, a kind of non-linear yet gradual settling. You might not notice that your mind is quiet, air quotes here, but you might notice that you're hearing more. You might notice that you're less caught. Things are flowing more in your being. You might notice the problem that was so real yesterday is like a dream today. Things are unfolding. Right? Practice ripens. But another form of ripening that is much less popular than the states of concentration is encountering the difficult things inside of us. It's important to remember that that too is progress. That too is part of deepening. We encounter all kinds of hang-ups, resentments, right? Stuffed away opinions, insecurities that we are so busy we didn't have to stop and feel. We stop and the karma, the gathered effect of how we've been living, now catches up to us right here. Before, maybe we could just stay in motion, so we didn't quite have to reckon with it. This practice is something like a poultice. Do you know what a poultice is? Poultice is like ideally it's a medicinal clay that you put on a kind of boil or thing on your skin, and it draws out the impurities further. And it's interesting, you use the earth on your body to pull forth. Well, you're pulling forth the earth, but it's impure. Practices like that. Now, of course, some of our difficulties are just part and parcel of having a body. Some people came to Sesshin with a whole battle plan against constipation. They've got it totally worked out, exactly what you drink and do at the right time to make sure that things are flowing. It's amazing. Very good. But we're faced with the challenge of the body. Right? Can't avoid that. It's true for young people, it's true for middle-aged, it seems to be true for old people. And some of our challenges related to that are not something that we can be blamed for, or we don't have confusion invested. It's just the fact that we yearn to feel good. There's a yearning in us to not feel bad. That's a basic fact of sentient beings. And sometimes in Sesshin we feel bad. If you haven't felt bad yet, you haven't yet done Sesshin. Right? And as Jung said, there's conscious suffering where we are present with our difficulties and therefore we grow. When we pervade what we're going through with willingness to feel, and there's bouncing away from it and feeling victimized by life, and that doesn't really help us. But we're not to be blamed for yearning to feel good, to feel okay. We can let the hardness, the faultless difficulties of being human break our resistance. You can make that a conscious practice. You feel the burden of existing. Welcome to the club. Really, really settle into that. Don't philosophize about it. There's enough books about that. Really let it penetrate you and know that that's true for everybody. Let it be big. If you're in that state right now, you can just feel your burden and become aware that every person in this room shares that burden. Everybody has the challenge of existence, believing they exist. And yet, something different, in the silence, we can really see how ugly, for example, our entitlement is. And we hear the mind that says, but I deserve X, Y, Z, A, B, C. I deserve. Or in the silence, we can really feel the pain and see the ugliness of our inner judgment. The mind can be so petty. The silliest things, we're casting judgment on people. Sometimes we're judging people for things they have no control over. In the quiet, it's evident how our anxiety is a burden we carry. In the Sangha, we see what pride is and how it poisons us. We see the mind that says, I'm like this, how are they like? Where am I in relationship to them? This is pride. So, not being in samadhi, in the times when you're not in listening, make good use of it. Pay attention to what the mind is doing, because still there's abundant learning. There's abundant learning. This is a listening stance. Right? And so often we be our automatic mind. Big difference between being automatic mind and it arising in your listening stance. Big difference. So to really see, to look directly, just like right now, just look at the mind with an unbiased listening. Look with the silent eye of the heart at the mind and whatever it's doing. Just as if you were observing one of your children. What is it up to? And go further. What is a thought anyway? No? One element of proudness is the thought of I'm better or I'm worse than. They're both pride. But don't take that on face value. This state I'm in, what is it like to just steadily listen to it? Whatever your condition is right now, see what that's like. Don't try to quiet your mind, but just listen to exactly what it's saying, what it's being. Sometimes you do that and it just melts and all that's left is the wind. All that's left is the simplicity of breath. Zazen practice is not therapy, and so it's totally okay just to let everything arise and pass. It's not a workshop for your personality. It's not a medicine for problems. The mind that sticks nowhere, and so is open everywhere. Anxiety is a song singing through. Pride is a song singing through. Sadness. More fundamentally, closer to the root, just words, images, pulsations, sensations. You find yourself in the rhythm. Sometimes things are dissolving their solidity. Sometimes they arise as cohered states of mind. Both are good to just let pass through. One of the things I have found seemingly obstructs my practice the most is some attitude in me say, this doesn't belong to me though. This feeling, this is for other people. Right? A terror of boredom. Some sense I can't experience this, and so I begin splitting off. Who says that whatever is arising doesn't belong to you, belongs to the universe? It belongs to the universe because we can't hold on to it anyway. It's all flowing. This isn't therapy, but occasionally we seem to get really entangled with something. We seem to be in an eddy. And then some kind of more measured inquiry can be useful. Right? What attitude does this disturbance in me spring from? There's the state of mind, and sometimes we can catch that. What's the attitude underneath that? Can I bring awareness? Can I listen through that attitude? Am I willing to see that this attitude, too, is something that appears but is not me? Am I willing to let it be there and to let it go? Is it masking something? Is it a shell around something? And sometimes we really, really have a strong spiritual longing, strong drive, and we find ourselves sitting here thinking, I don't really care about this anyway. We're lying to ourselves. What's underneath that? For me, sometimes under my irritation fur is sadness flesh. Read you a poem to close. When mind in its own most purity is known, then perception is pure simple pleasure. The single taste of awareness's golden ground. This world is made of meanings, and what meanings it is made of depend entirely upon our mind's condition. Happily, it is quite possible to train the mind to move from non-virtue habit to virtue habit in order to go beyond all habit into the realm where sacredness flows out from the heart. So non-virtue habit are those thought patterns that don't help you. Clearly see this way of thinking doesn't help. It doesn't serve. It doesn't do anything but reiterate the same old way I've been seeing life. We interrupt non-virtue. We listen intently. That's virtue habit. The poem continues, having moved beyond the mind's conditioning into contemplation, appearances cease to be things at all. Right now, feel the flow of your experience. Feel the happening of your experience. Body is happening. It's not a lump. All your senses and everything in them are happening. They're not static. And even the moods and the feelings that seem to be like peanut butter on the ribs, they're alive with motion. When the mind is pure, it sees purity. Or when the mind is pure, it hears purity. When the mind is love, it sees love. When the mind is beauty, it sees beauty. Even where there is impurity, the mind of purity sees the pure. Even where there is unlove, the mind of love finds love. Even where there is ugliness, the mind of beauty sees with a tenderness. It can do nothing else. The deep and the shallow of each moment is a wonder more satisfying than anything ever dreamt in the desirings of humanity. It is when this is not known that human beings turn perceiving into suffering. Just like what Huineng was saying, we turn perceiving into suffering. It is when this is not known that human beings turn perceiving into suffering and the frantic efforts to relieve suffering. There is no need for remedy when the true condition of things is known. Put alertness in your ear consciousness. Recognize right now the transparency of that alertness, the boundlessness of that alertness. In alertness, vividly you hear, and tracelessly each sound disappears, making room for the next.